This is my screensaver, which means that we are 20 minutes past.
Is it the normal color or
No. It's missing the same.
And what is the prime? It's the cable.
Huh?
What is the prime?
yeah, it could be the cable.
Generally, it's a cable.
Yeah, but here it's seems to
Have
be
you tried
okay.
with another computer?
To try with another computer? No, I
To
didn't.
if
I don't mind. It's only a PDF. I have a PDF, so I can work with another computer also. But
It's not a computer.
it's not a computer, says the experts.
Well, and everybody believes the expert. Maybe.
So
The view is
I have an okay go. How is it in NASA? Go okay.
Okay, full go.
Okay.
Okay, full go. I don't know.
Whatever. Okay, so good afternoon. Today I'm going to present a seminar based on work done by Victoras and myself. The topic is open-ended intelligence, and perhaps I would like, in order to present the topic, I will start with a quote by Theodorius Dobzhansky. You know this name?
Evolutionary biologist?
Yeah. He said nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. And actually, I would like to add to this that nothing at all makes sense except in the light of evolution. But the way that I mean evolution here is more in a broader sense than the biological evolution, and it's about the evolution of order out of disorder. So, actually, what we try to do with the open-ended intelligence is to develop or to make a foundation for a metaphysics of self-organization that will be applicable to any topic. It's completely transdisciplinary. And I was thinking, just when I was on my way to the university, to start with the last slide, almost the last slide, because at the end everybody is tired and bored already, so look at the last slide, and then we walk all the way down to it and see it again at the conclusion. So this is the last slide. I will read it to you. It's a little bit dense, but it's in a nutshell everything that I'm about to talk this afternoon. It's open-ended intelligence is a process where a distributed population of interacting heterogeneous agents spontaneously achieves a coordination and bring forth new individuals and their sense objects. Open-ended intelligence is truly general in the sense that it is not directed or limited by an a priori given goal or a challenge. And maybe most importantly is to know that open-ended intelligence, the way that I will explain, manifests all around us and at many scales simultaneously. Of course, the best example is the evolution of life, the phylogenetic and ontogenetic organization of brains, cognitive development and sense-making, though I will be using sense-making in a much broader sense than what is implied here. And of course, in the self-organization of complex systems, physical, biological, and of course human societies, human organizations, and so on. So this is the summary of what I'm going to talk about. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense. So now, in the course of the time that I have, I will try to make sense of what is written here in a more detailed fashion. So maybe let us start to consider what exactly is intelligence. So what I was thinking about, just to make a kind of a very, very general notion of intelligence, is an intelligent agent or intelligent system is, or intelligence at large, is systematically fitting actions to perceptions in order to achieve something. And this kind of very general definition, it involves many other things. Some of them are quite complex, or maybe all of them are complex. It's learning from past experience, the phenomena of learning, having experiences and being able to induce, to forecast, to predict the future based on experience. And adjacent to it, and not less important, is overcoming past experience, is being able to note, well, reality is nothing is as it seems. Reality is nothing what we were thinking about, and though we have an experience and we are habituated to use our experience as the most reliable thing in order to perform actions, overcoming experience is not less important. And of course, we have all sorts of pattern recognition, and pattern recognition can cover almost maybe everything in the every other item in the list. It's identifying patterns according to concepts, categories, of course, identifying meaning, identifying connections between perceptions and actions. And it goes, of course, it involves also abstraction and modeling. Another important field that we associate with intelligence is optimization. Doing things better and more efficiently, especially when we are facing a situation of limited resources. And of course, very broad searching things not in a random manner. So these are more or less things that we associate with intelligence. I have this. In the circles of artificial general intelligence, which is the topic of researching intelligence in the broadest sense, the accepted definition that almost everybody is using is the ability to achieve complex goals in complex environments. So I would cautiously add to this definition is the ability to achieve complex changing goals in complex changing environments. But usually the goals are, whoever is using this kind of definition agrees that environments may change, but the goals usually stay quite set up and a priori given. There is a nice collection of other definitions of intelligence that this definition is presuming to distill in a paper from 2007, whoever is interested in how to define intelligence. It's an interesting read, not very long one. But in the overall, the conventional concept of intelligence is teleological, meaning it's made evolved with an a priori given final purpose. So when we think or contemplate about intelligence, we are speaking about achieving something which is given a priori, and therefore there is a kind of a final purpose. And therefore, in this seminar, in this presentation, I will relate to this kind of definition as goal-oriented intelligence. And now to have another angle, it's goal-oriented intelligence is a measure of some competence of an agent to match actions to observations, and in order to achieve some kind of an optimal rewards, when the rewards actually represent a goal, which is a given. And so, if you look at this picture, I mean, this picture, do you recognize it? What is it?
It's the cosmic microwave background.
Yeah, so it's a kind of a symbol of all the cosmos, all the environment is open, and we can get observations, we can act upon it to this or that extent, and we can match observation to actions using a string of rewards that is matching some kind of a criteria or a goal that we have in mind. What will be interesting to see is the presumptions that are underlying this definition of general intelligence. So, actually, we have here a sharp distinction between agent and the environment. There is a very sharp distinction. We know where is the agent, where is the environment, and of course, because there is this sharp distinction, there are also well-defined interactions that are allowable in this kind of image between the agent and the environment. And another assumption is that the environment is observer independent at least to a large extent, and is a priori given. So in most cases, we don't know everything there is to know about the environment. We know very little about it, but the assumption, the underlying assumption that the environment is there, it is observer independent, so, and actually we can do whatever we like with the environment without it fundamentally changing. Another assumption is that the rewards are goal-driven, so there is the underlying assumption here is that there is a direct cause and effect between the rewards that we get and the goals that we have in mind. So we do not consider rewards that may come just not because we are working towards a certain goal. And last but not least is that the agent that we are thinking about has some kind of computational capacities in order to do this matching between perceptions and actions. Is some kind of capacity. If somebody is objecting computation, the word computational, it is an intelligent capacity, and I think it's fair to say that it is a computational capacity, but the agent have this capacity to make whatever it needs to do in order to operate intelligently, and this is somehow connecting computation to intelligence. There is a strong connection as it is perceived today, and if we look at this list, we can see that all the presumptions strongly appeal to common sense, and at first sight, you don't have a lot to say about it, because they're really based on common sense, on common understanding that also is found to be effective in all what people do today with artificial intelligence in education, etc. So this is not something that can easily be done with or discarded. Anyway, these presumptions overlook a few things. I have a very short list here, but the list is much more profound and long, but I have chosen just to give you the impression of what motivates our work. So this kind of definition overlooks processes of agent-environment differentiation and boundary formation. So we take as if given that the sharp distinctions are there when we are approaching the issue of intelligence, but we all know that all over around us there are processes that actually define the borderlines and the boundaries between agents and their environments. On the same token, processes of goal and value formation. And here the remark is that intelligence never starts with solving a problem, but much earlier in the formation of a problematic situation. I will say a little bit more about what is a problematic situation. This is taken from postmodern theory, but in very broad sense, a problematic situation is a situation from which a problem emerges as something which is distinct and can be addressable. So the problematic situation is something which comes even before any specific problem. But I will speak about it a little bit later. And of course there is the issue that environments also involve other intelligent agents, and even if we consider an intelligent agent the way that we considered in the previous slide, when you have intelligent agents as part of your environment, there is an issue of reflexivity, because intelligent agents are known to be able to change their goals and to make changes to their environments. And of course, if I'm an intelligent agent, it will also affect me. And in this sense, I cannot relate to the environment anymore as something which is a priori given, because the environment is not only changing, because it's not that people that are using goal-oriented intelligence don't think that the environment changes. They use all sorts of probabilistic and statistical models in order to gain some information about how the environment behaves and how it changes. But what they don't consider is the fact that the environment is not entirely given. It's not deterministic in the sense that I can even apply statistical or probabilistic models in an effective manner. So, the intermediate conclusion is that the current definition of intelligence covers only a well-determined kind of intelligence, plus minus. Of course, there are a lot of methods today that try to overcome this, but conceptually, still, all sorts of developments in artificial intelligence today, the understanding of intelligence also in humans and animals, it is still a well-determined kind of intelligence, and I will speak about this as well a bit later. But this definition neglects the more profound and difficult to define processes that involves the emergence of intelligent behavior. And this is, of course, the focus of what I want to say. Now, you probably remember this famous quote by Wittgenstein, who said that whereof one cannot speak clearly, thereof one must be silent. But babies seem not to follow this instruction, and they are speaking. They have nothing to say, and they don't know how to speak, but still they do. And this is very fortunate, because if they would have followed the Wittgenstein saying, they would never learn to speak. So on the same token, by analogy, we may ask, what is intelligence prior to anything intelligible? When I don't have any structure or order at end in order to base my activities, my perceptions, etc., is there any sense to speak about intelligence before, prior to anything which is intelligible? And to answer this question, we need some deeper examination, which goes into, unfortunately, it goes into philosophy. But one thing that we can see is that our thinking about intelligence seems to be constrained by some kind of an abstract image, that there is an a priori given agent, an environment, and of course the relations between them. And the question that I want to deal with this afternoon is it possible to make fewer assumptions than the assumptions that I listed just above? Because making fewer assumptions, we may be able to, conceptually speaking, go beyond the conventional image of goal-oriented intelligence and arrive into something more fundamental, which we call, as you might guess, open-ended intelligence. And it's really a question that I'm dealing with, even struggling with, whether we can still think about intelligence if we give up clear boundaries and distinctions between agents and environment, and also the observations and actions that are implied by such boundaries and distinctions, and also the definite goals with associated mapping of rewards. And at first sight, it seems that if we give up all these three, if we give up the distinctions, it seems that there is nothing left to build upon, so we are left with just hanged in the void, if you like. And it's really a question, how is one to make sense out of nonsense situation where no agents and no objects can be identified to begin with. And here is where some kind of a conceptual leap needs to be taken, because understandably, goal-oriented intelligence answers fairly competently the question, what does it mean to be intelligent? So if we have a given situation, a given problem, like we have to identify cats in arbitrary repository of pictures without knowing a lot about what are cats, etc. But we have a problem, we have a well-defined problem, we have the capacity to deal with it. And this is an aspect, it's an angle of intelligent behavior. But the conceptual leap that we need to take here is that we are not so much interested in what does it mean to be intelligent, but in a different question, what does it mean to become intelligent? And the idea of the concept of open-ended intelligence is that open-ended intelligence is not a something, it's not a competence, it's not a competence, it's not a property of a certain set of behaviors. This distinguishes them from non-intelligent behavior. But open-ended intelligence is a process. And this is very important to remember. Open-ended intelligence is a process of becoming intelligent. And it is the sense-making, and again I will speak about it a bit later, is the sense-making that precedes clear distinctions and goals and brings them forth. So here we can make a very short summary of or comparison. While goal-oriented intelligence deals with definite boundaries, definite goals, and definite capacities, open-ended intelligence is something that deals with fluid boundaries, progressively determined goals and capacities, and also it deals with metastable and problematic situations, and I will speak about it again in a moment. So this kind of strange drawing tries to give you a notion of what is the main difference between goal-oriented intelligence and open-ended intelligence. But you see that the borderline between them, you have this. So the borderline between them is itself not very defined. So we don't know exactly where. We don't want to know exactly where goal-oriented intelligence ends and open-ended intelligence begins, and vice versa. So, in order to make this conceptual leap that I am speaking about, now we need to get a little bit familiar with certain terminology about the idea of intelligence as a process. So, and this is more or less embedded in what I call the theory of individuation. The conventional concept of intelligence is definitely grounded in entities that are called individuals. And individuals, actually philosophically speaking, they are primary ontological elements. I'm not speaking about individual human beings, but individuals as a philosophical concept. Individuals are unambiguously definable by a certain philosophical axiom called Aristotle's principle of excluded middle. Do I need to explain about it, or you're familiar with this? So, maybe the most important thing about individuals is that they are unambiguously defined and separable from each other. And the observation that mostly, if we observe ourselves, our thinking processes, and not only thinking, emoting processes, and even actions, we understand the world by identifying individuals and relations among them. And actually everything starts and ends with individuals. And even when we speak about the genesis of individuals, it's merely the manner by which one individual transitions into another. And therefore, the whole framework by which we interpret the world and think conceptually about it, many things, is that stable entities are primary ontological constructs, while change is secondary. So we cannot have change without having before that certain things that are capable of changing. So, yeah.
This is the same, just to go with what you're saying, this is the the same shift happens with the change from essentialism to existentialism, where you have the essence of the thing, and then in existentialism, the essence becomes defined by the individuals and their process of.
Yes, of course, existentialism is kind of a derivative of this, but I think that this is the kind of that stable entities are primary and changes secondary is something that started with Heraclitus
Yeah.
in ancient Greek, but it was not very popular in the course of the history of philosophy. It's not very popular. I think in the philosophical opus of the 20th century, people like Nietzsche, Bergson, Deleuze, of course, who just Deleuze was. Everybody thinks that Deleuze is primarily a philosopher, but his education was history of philosophy. So he was very, very focused about seeing the process of evolution of ideas within philosophy. And I think his most important work is just making the point that we think in terms of stable entities and change in secondary. And he actually tried to bring a completely different outlook on the world that goes back to Heraclitus and says, no, we can create a philosophy where change is primary and stable entities are secondary. And this is actually the angle of the perspective that is being taken in this work in order to establish a metaphysics of self-organization.
Which is also the starting point of Taoism.
Yes.
You might say it's a Western philosophy starting from Aristotle and Plato that kind of got rid of this tradition. Otherwise, I think it was quite a static process.
Yes, of course, the Taoism is definitely puts much importance on the concept of flow. At least, I would say that Taoism takes with a huge grain of salt everything which starts to present itself as authoritative, stable, existing as such, etc., etc. And even more generally in the Eastern traditions, and also mainly in Buddhism, but not only, also in the Shivaistic tradition, emphasis is given to change. And of course, the first principle of Buddhism is the realization of impermanence. It all goes to this point.
But impermanence is something different, doesn't it? Because impermanence means things are stable, but not endlessly stable. The Tao is the way which is flowing, and it's the flow that is the first thing.
Yes.
Whatever thing that come out of it are ephemeral. So.
Yes, and also in the Buddhism in its deeper philosophical roots goes even beyond permanence and impermanence. It is something else. I will not enter into it now, though I am enthusiastic to speak about it. We have a few slides to go over. So, in the attempt for a new concept of intelligence, the idea is to try to replace individuals with individuation, which is a process. And of course, instead of positing individuals as primary ontological elements, in individuation, we posit as primary the process of becoming. And there is a lot to say about individuation.
Do
It's-
you need to have the becoming of individuals being primary? You could also have processes that do not become individuals but are still primary.
Again,
Well, individuation, as far as I understood, is the formation of individuals. You say,
Yes.
see, that is primary. But what
Yes.
about processes that do not produce individuals?
okay.
These are even more primary, I would say.
Primary, yes. Primary in this sense is in the metaphysical, ontological sense. Meaning that if we say that individuals are primary, it means that we can have individuals without individuation. If I say that individuation is primary, it means that we can have individuation, but not necessarily it will lead to individuals. So the primacy is an ontological primacy. It doesn't mean that every process of individuation will end in producing individuals that are stable.
Then why call it individuation? It
The-
seems to imply the creation of an individual.
I think that this is a kind of an historical, it belongs to the discourse of how these ideas have been developed. I'm not sure that, I like,
Why not call it process or flow? Sometimes the
Process
process
of
can
flow-
give rise to an individual, but in many cases it's just a process that changes into something else, something else, something else. It's never an individual.
because process, to call it, I can answer it, is that the answer is that using a term like a process of flow does not confront you with the fact that you are used to think in terms of individuals, and you have to create some kind of maybe for you it's not like this, but for most people,
process philosophies are about processes.
yeah, but process philosophies are very not prominent. They are kind of I wouldn't. I don't like to be disrespectful.
Philosophies are more prominent.
Yeah, but not
Either
in
of
this
them is
room.
prominent.
Not in this room between 2 and 4 this afternoon. Yes. In any other day, they are a footnote as well. But I believe that it's very, very important for the future of how we think about ourselves, how we think about the world, how we think about intelligence, etc. So here I try to bring it into prominence, but of course you are right that after 4 o'clock in this room and all over the campus, I don't think it's more than a footnote. Nevertheless, I think it's important enough to think about it. So there is a lot to say about individuation, but I will give it a very short and it's a kind of a working definition that is useful enough for our context. Individuation is the forming or becoming of individuals. Yes, I put the one in front of the other, and they are, though from my standpoint, I don't need individuals in order to think about the process. It's important to note. And it is a primal formative process whereas boundaries and distinctions arise without assuming any individuals that precede them. And this is the important point here. And here, I would like to add a few more terms in order to just to build not a skeleton. How you when you build a building, a scaffold. I want to build a certain kind of a terminological scaffold by adding a few more terms that are associated with individuation. And these are the concepts of metastability, intensity, incompatibility, disparity, and assemblages. These are all things that I will go through very quickly here. But when we develop the new concept of intelligence, individuals are merely temporally stable phases within a continuous process of transformation or a flow. And when we look at the individual, though we see something which is more or less stable, every every individual is always pregnant with not yet actualized and not yet known potentialities that may change it, destroy it, split it, do whatever, and I will speak about it again in the following slides. And so I will go quickly about this just to give you a notion of the vocabulary which is being used in order to investigate individuation. So we have this concept of metastability, which means that a process of individuation is metastable in the sense that an individuating system is moving among multiple attractors, but not only this, individuation also involves a possible transformation of the system state space, so the very structure and relations between different attractors or shapes, topography of the state space is also given to change. And individuation, of course, takes place as long as the system has not reached a final stability, exhausting all potential for change. Yes, but yes, and we have to admit that final stability does not exist. It's merely an idealization that we are using in the way that we are thinking, and sometimes we come to mistake this as reality. But in reality, there is never final stability, and therefore there are no individuals that are purely individual in the sense that they will not change anymore. Everything is in change. Yes?
When you use the word system, you
I know.
also have the prior boundary of the system.
Yeah, but I correct it later. You're right, of course. But you start to search a word for every word, and it becomes so complicated that you cannot say anything. So, of course,
individual about attractors also already assume that there is a state space. So if you
yes,
say that the state
and
space
therefore,
changes, then,
and therefore, individuation involves possible transformation of a system state space, meaning the state space itself is being transformed and changes in the number of dimensions, state variables, relations, etc. So, in the paper that we wrote, of course, this gets a little bit more attention.
But it's still like every noun you use is
Yeah.
identification.
Yeah, because our language is is overlaying an ontology of individuals as primary objects, and our language is built like this.
You could write in verbs only.
but in the end, it's kind of stylistic in the sense that in language you can do nominalization, which means turning a verb into a noun, like individuation is a nominalization of to individuate, and vice versa. You can take a noun and turn it into, like Shima did with resiliency.
Yeah, there are some kind of tricks that you can use, but in fact, our language is centered and stabilized. The grammatical structure of most languages, as far as I know, is based on entities, individuated entities, individuals. Another term is intensity. Very simply, the motion of individuation is driven by intensive differences, which we call intensities. And basically, it's a general term for energetic differences that drive structural and state changes, again, in a system. Take it in parentheses. Wherever it's written system, you can call it, you can use the Derrida's trick. It's system. Derrida has this trick that you can write a text suppose here I could use it. You can write a system with a sur-réseau. And then you read the word, but you know that it's not that you erase the word because you see it, but it is erased.
You mean it's, how do you call it?
Abstracted.
Abstracted, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is
Ah,
a,
that's an interesting, that's an
This-
interesting formatting that I haven't yet used in my text.
This
I
is-
like to play with formatting, but
so Derrida was Jacques Derrida was particularly occupied with problems like this, and he was writing text with certain words just being strike through to show you that use the word but leave it like open-ended or not fully defined or not defined as conventionally being defined, etc., etc.
well, I think the more conventional way of doing it is putting it in quotation mark system.
Yeah, that's another. And of course, intensities are context specific. A few examples are that intensities can be differences in temperature, difference in chemical concentration or economic wealth that can drive social processes, psychological needs, distribution of populations in ecologies, and so on. And again, to repeat, individuals always have inner intensities that may drive future transformation or disintegration. And these are termed pre-individual. This is another term. And since they precede the individual, and if you like, I can give you an example. You have a family unit, a husband and a wife, 2 children, a cat and a dog living in a nice house. Everything is harmonious. They have wonderful sex. They have friendship. All is really ideal. But the woman walks somewhere and somebody arrives to the office. A guy who has nothing for her. But when she sees him, there is what we call in the movies fatal attraction. Where have this come from? Everything was okay. This family unit was really, it was stable, it was successful, it was ongoing, it was, but sometimes even crossing looks creates a situation where all this very stable unit is put into jeopardy, and this is not something that you can prevent, because this, what I call the fatal attraction, has to do with a certain layer of human existence that for most people is not controllable, and even if nothing will happen to this family, there is an intensity suddenly that is just threatening to do something to it, to weaken it.
It's called the libidinal energy of the unconscious.
Here we are.
That's a reductionistic view.
Yeah, here we are. But the point here is that to show that all individuals have all sorts of intensities that may threat them in disintegrating, but even before that, transforming them, changing them, and this is something which is both.
Isn't that what in physics would be called the gradients or potential difference? And what in our challenge propagation model we call it the process of challenge relaxation. And challenge is always the difference
Yes,
between a
definitely.
situation that could be and a situation that is.
Definitely.
The system seeks to reduce those differences, and that is the dynamic discipline.
Definitely, yes. The concept of intensity is actually not as simple as I present it here. It is something that I'm trying to understand, because again, yes, it's. I say here it's kind of energetic differences, but not always you can translate it into, or in most cases you cannot really translate it into physical entities or physical forces. For example, if we have differences in economic wealth within a certain community, it is also a kind of an intensity. So this concept carries with it, again, a meaning which is more profound than what we usually assign to physical processes or even processes in biology or chemistry, etc. Which this is the examples that are usually being given to it.
No, but the notion of a gradient is
Yes.
kind of very abstract. It could
Yeah.
be any gradient. If
Yeah.
there's a neighborhood in which there is a rich neighborhood and a poor neighborhood, there's kind of a gradient of wealth which makes that the people will tend to move from the one to the other, or maybe
Yes.
that the poor will go to the rich neighborhood to steal or to beg. It creates the dynamic.
Yes. Since you mentioned it, I will take another minute just to expose a little bit the problematics in this. Is that when we say gradient, we already assume that this concept called intensity is something which is quantifiable. You can give it, you can sum it up in a number within a certain context or within a certain model, you can sum it up in a number. But the people, the philosophers, the thinkers that were started to develop this idea of intensity, they don't agree that an intensity is something which is always quantifiable. Sometimes it is a matter of quality or a meeting point between different qualities. And this becomes pretty much complicated, and it goes away from the more simple way of modeling things, and it is much less systematic. So if we give up, if we strike through system, we have to strike through gradient as well, because gradient implies that you can quantify it, while intensities are not always something which can be quantified. All right. Now, the next term is incompatibility. And the incompatibility is a situation where a set of interacting elements pose to each other problems or challenges. This is very similar to the theory of challenges. And incompatible situations prompt resolution, and it creates what I called, what I mentioned before, a problematic situation. Problematic situation is unstable, non-organized. It lacks coordinated interactions, and most importantly, as I promised before, it does not give itself to systematic description. And of course, just to connect, situations of incompatibility bring forth intensity. And just one example, when a predator and the prey are being engaged, this is a problematic situation that requires some kind of resolution.
Would that be a generalization of the idea of dissonance or thesis, antithesis, that then calls forth a sense of resolution?
Dissonance, definitely yes. Thesis and antithesis, no, because thesis and antithesis, you have this kind of a polarity, while the idea of incompatibility or a problematic situation is always multiple. There are more than. It's not that something is in a negation of something else, because this already implies a certain kind of a connection or relation between them. Well, the problematic situation, if I go to the next slide, disparity, which is an extreme case of a problematic situation, the elements that we are observing initially lack any common ground. And in principle, every process of individuation starts from disparity. It starts from something which is really disordered, not organized, or only very partly organized. But disparity comes to mean an extreme situation where it's not organized. And when we speak about individuation that starts from disparity, we need also to consider the emergence of a system of coordinating signals. So the situation of disparity is like if I meet something, if I meet somebody, and we don't even speak the same language, but because of some reason we need to interact. So we have also to create a system of signals in order to be able to create a system of relations and distinctions between us. So, just to give you a short example how to use these terms. So, the example is an argument, a situation of an argument. An argument is an individuating system because it can reach various partial agreements, crises, fights, etc., etc. So, we cannot know what will be the final outcome of an argument. It is a metastable situation because there are potentials of change in the personal relations between the arguing parties, and the participants desire to each hold to their own convictions and persuade the other to change his, and this desire is the intensity that I was speaking about. It drives and animates the interaction, and perhaps more importantly, thinking differently about a situation that requires a joint coordinated action is a problematic situation. If we don't have to act together, if we don't have to coordinate, there is no problem. But if we are in a situation where we do not agree, or we do not see, we have different views, we have different worldviews or understandings, but we need to do something jointly, this is a problematic situation. The incompatibility in perspective between the agent must be resolved, at least to a degree that will allow a joint action. And disparity is the situation where we are not speaking even the same language. Okay, we may speak English, but still we don't speak the same language. You know, everybody encounters situations like this.
That happens all the time.
It's important to define where the incompatibility is. Even people with different goals may still act in a coordinated way.
Yeah.
Because their goals are somehow complementary.
Yeah. It doesn't mean a problematic situation does not mean that we have an opposing goals, etc. We may have completely different goals and still we can cooperate and resolve the problematic situation by understanding what each of one wants to do, needs to do, etc. So this is an example.
I prefer to call that fiction. It's the clear incompatibility that leads to loss of energy, loss of activity, because you can be incompatible without being in each other's way.
Friction is, in this sense, I would say that friction is a kind of a side effect, because we have intensities at play within an argument, and definitely we say a lot of time that we had a heated argument, meaning the intensities created heat. It's a physical heat because we are a biological system, and a certain kind of exchange, it becomes heated. Definitely when we have free energy and it is injected into a system, some of the energy goes into because of friction, it goes into heat, and therefore we have sometimes heated arguments. And now I want to say a few things about the mechanism of individuation. So we have to consider interactions among a collection of initially incompatible agents that are within a large population of agents that right now I don't say anything about them besides the fact that they are heterogeneous, they are different from each other. But what is most important, if we have this kind of a collection of initially incompatible agents, the outcome of interactions, and I don't specify at all what is the nature of interaction, but the outcome is unique and unpredictable, and not necessarily it follows a systemic development. And importantly, these are incompatible agents, because if they were a priori compatible, we would have already have some kind of an organization or coordination between them. So if we have a collection or a population of incompatible agents, the outcome of their interaction is unique and unpredictable. And therefore, what we can say about them, and this is a very important notion in the development of the idea, is that in the course of their interaction, the outcome is determinable but not determined. Because in the local interactions that are taking place between different agents that are incompatible, something will come to pass, something will happen. Whether these agents will destroy each other, maybe they will merge into some kind of super agent, maybe they will create some coordinated activities between them. The important thing is that prior to the actual interaction, the situation between them is that the outcome is determinable but is not yet determined. And this is a very important distinction between something which is determined and something which is indeterministic. Anyway, sorry?
It's a nice problem of today's discussion and all troubles we have today is an issue of that.
Yes, as soon as we have a model or a system which is somehow corresponds to reality, we can make predictions, we can make determination, and we can do a lot of things. But if we have a situation of incompatibility, though the situation is determinable, because still it is a physical system, and there will be an outcome before the interaction itself, because it has reached a certain stage, we cannot know in advance what is going to be there. And this is why determination, finding the outcome, necessitates actual, localized, and conceptual and contextualized interaction, where the participating agents reciprocally determine behavioral and structural aspects of each other. So within these interactions, something happens. They start to determine each other's behaviors, and this stands at the basis of the idea of coordination that will come a bit later. And once such determinations form, they form what I call assemblages, and this is the last term that I'm going to go through. The concept of assemblage is a generalization. I find it as a generalization of a complex adaptive system, and assemblage is a network of interacting heterogeneous individuals that have established a kind of a partial compatibility among them. So the compatibility is not final, it's never final. But whenever we have a network of agents that have established certain partial compatibility, we can call it an assemblage, and this is a very important notion in all this theory of individuation. It was first developed by Deleuze and Guattari, and then expanded and extended and very clearly explained by Delanda. The references are in the slides. And assemblages possess an intrinsic, though metastable individuality. They have already some kind of individuality, and this individuality, most importantly, does not depend on external observer, but only on the relations that they have established and stabilized. And now, the perspective or the angle that is allowed by the idea of assemblages, that we can look at individuals as having two types or two categories of properties. The first category is what I call identifying properties. And this is something that we are quite familiar with. The identified properties define the individuals and is based on the interactions that were achieved between different components or different elements. But the more important category of properties is the capacities of the individual to interact. And to interact means to affect and be affected by other elements. And why this is important, why the capacities to interact are so important.
But now you speak about interaction at the level of the whole assemblage, no longer the individual agents.
No, what I mean here is that we have a network of a lot of agents that have some interactions among them, and because of these interactions, once such interactions become relatively stable, they create a certain kind of something which is an individual. It is individual in the sense that these relations are creating certain identifying properties to the whole collection of the interacting agents. But all these also have sorts of capacities to interact.
To me, it seems like you have been working on a definition of democracy rather than agency. Rather than.
Yeah, these ideas are very abstract and therefore they are applicable to many.
Weaver has a problem with politics.
This is,
Don't get him too close to politics.
Not today, not today. So, while the individual's properties are more or less stable and independent because they depend only on the interactions that are already established within the group.
How do you define properties? For me, a property is a capability for interaction. A property must be measurable, which means that there must be some interaction that reveals it.
Yes. Let me go back to this example about the ideal couple with 2 children and a cat living in a nice house, etc.
The problem is that there's no such thing as ideal couple. You know, it's
Okay, this is off topic.
well, there's the image, it functions, but
They have a set of interactions between them that you don't have to know all these interactions, but when you look at them from the outside, you will see certain behaviors that are repeatable and can be correlated to these people operating, these two humans operating together in a certain manner. But the bond between them, which is fed by the interactions that they have, is not something which depends on me observing them from the outside, because two different observers will see may see different things. So it is a property which is dependent on the interaction. So whether you...
The more stabilized the interaction, the more intransparent it becomes from the outside.
Yes, definitely.
Because the stability of the interaction means that as an outsider you can no longer interact with that interaction, so you don't see it anymore. It's like, let's say within a diamond, the atoms are bonded together so strongly that you no longer see that there is an interaction between those atoms.
Yeah, and I'm going to speak about this if I get to there. But maybe most important about the difference between capacities to interact and capacities and properties that are identifying is actually there is no limit to the number and kind of relations that an individual is capable of creating with other agents or other individuals. And therefore, the set of capacities to interact is open-ended and non-deterministic. And this is very, very important in the way you wanted to say something?
Just saying, a good example for this that you could use is the approaching the final scenes in the movie Her. You know, when Samantha's interacting with Joaquin Phoenix asks her, how many people are you in love with? And she says, 742.
Yes.
How many people are you talking to right now? She says, 9,472 or something like this. So it's just this example of approaching singularity, the number of relations we hold.
Yes, and every such relation holds the potential to fundamentally transform the individual.
Yeah.
And this is the power. This is why open-ended intelligence, as the name open-ended, is the realization that the openness to interactions has actually an infinite power of transformation.
But when I say
That's an essential mistake of the Newtonian worldview of determinism. The determinism assumes that you already know everything that is in the universe, everything there is to know. But you never know everything there is to know. There are always things outside. And because you don't know what that outside thing is, the moment you start interacting with it, the interaction will be indeterministic.
Yeah.
Because two things that have never interacted before, by definition, will create a new kind of interaction which you don't know unless you have done it.
Now, what becomes determined in individuation is the actual interactive capacities. So we have a kind of a spectrum of infinite or indefinite number of possible interactions, but what happens in individuation is there is a process where actual interactive capacities are being consolidated in the immediacy of, yes, I can speak with everybody, but now I'm speaking with you. And you are changing me, while all the universe, all other people that I am capable of speaking, they can change me as well. But now I'm speaking with you. And when I'm speaking with you, you have the actual capacity of interaction, transformation, disintegration, etc. So this is what where did I go? So this is
Actual interactive capacities. That
Yeah.
seems kind of a bit contradiction, because the capacities are about potentials, and you're speaking about the actual ones, so what is it in how far is it? Already there in how far is it potential?
maybe the wording is not clear enough, but what I mean is that true that we have an open-ended and non-deterministic set of capacities to interact, but at every given moment, there is a kind of asymmetry breaking because I interact only with a very small subset of this indefinite set of capacities. So only a very limited set is being actualized at every given moment. So
Yes.
this is it's more clear now.
Yeah, but then I wouldn't call it a capacity, then it's an actual action. So longer capacity is an actual
Yes,
action.
I agree that maybe the wording here is not the most accurate. But again, this is why actual interaction is necessary for the determination, and why the resulting relations cannot be predicted a priori. And all this is just to argue that the process that we call open-ended intelligence is open-ended in the sense that it has infinite potential of transformation and it cannot be predicted. It becomes actualized by the interactions, the actual interactions, and the ongoingness in the immediacy. So now we more or less are done with this very, very condensed presentation of the theory of individuation, where I tried just to give you the vocabulary, the very basic vocabulary of speaking the language of individuation. And now we'll focus a bit more about open-ended intelligence and cognition. And the thesis, the whole thesis of this work is that the individuating processes that bring forth individuals as solutions to problematic situations are initially unformed and manifesting. This is the manifestation of open-ended intelligence. And of course, natural evolution is a prominent example. Thinking about it, organisms interacting in their environments are undeniably intelligent, but their intelligence is only apparent as an already individuated product of an evolutionary process. So what we see when we observe organisms, we see the fitness between them and their environment, and this is actually underlies the argument that these organisms are intelligent. They operate intelligently in their environment, but this intelligence is already goal-oriented and it is consolidated by evolutionary processes. But the process of natural evolution itself is an example of what I would call open-ended intelligence, because it is the process of bringing forth such intelligent agents. And therefore, in developing the concept of open-ended intelligence, we are not interested so much in the consolidated post-manifestation, which are all coming under the category of goal-oriented intelligence, but more about the formative processes. And here comes the first connection with cognition, because we relate to systems as cognitive, whereas cognition is taken in the broadest sense. And I want to show you next that how we draw lines that connect open-ended intelligence to the individuation of cognition and cognitive systems. Just to be very short about it, cognition is a complex activity and it involves agents that are operating in environments. And it's definitely, cognition is about an ongoing problem-solving activity, which means that the roots of all cognitive activities are in problematic situations that require resolution by action. And And the activity of cognition is always full of intensity and challenges that drive change, and this is of course resonating with the challenge propagation idea or theory.
Here, I like in this idea that the roots of cognition is in a problematic situation, and the idea that life itself is problematic.
Yeah,
I like
definitely.
You could use the quote from Kurt Vonnegut. You know, he said, "This is my favorite quote." That life is a horrible thing to do to an animal.
Yeah.
Well, I've always had a much more neutral definition of a problem. A problem is a difference between the present situation and the situation as you would ideally like it to be. That doesn't mean that the present situation needs to be horrible, as long as you can imagine something better.
But this is the traditional dialectic between materialism and idealism.
Yeah.
What you just said was the traditional dialectic between materialism and idealism.
The present situation and the ideal design situation.
Exactly.
That's not quite how I understood the difference between materialism and idealism.
Anyway, again, repeating with a difference, with a kind of a difference, the question: how do agents, environments, and their dynamic problematic relations that facilitate cognitive activity, how they emerge? And the answer I would like to give is in the concept of sense making. And I want to connect it, of course, to open-ended intelligence. And here is a working definition for sense making. It is the bringing forth of a world of distinctions, objects, and entities, and the relation among them. And we understand sense making to be the individuation of cognition as applied to general systems. And also, I would like to know that primary distinctions such as objective, subjective, physical, mental, etc., are all outcomes of the process of sense making. And most critically, sense making precedes the existence of individual entities and is actually necessary condition to their emergence. And the connection is that open-ended intelligence is therefore the bringing forth of a complex world via the activity of sense-making. And the concept, it captures two distinct meanings that I would like to mention here. The first and more conventional one, sense-making speaks about making distinctions as a concrete individual cognitive capacity intrinsic to individuals. So I am as an organism, a goal-oriented organism. I have the ability to make distinctions, which is already established in my system. But another meaning, the second meaning, sense-making is the forming of new distinctions. It's and actually it's the process of the individuation of cognition, or what we call open-ended intelligence. And the second meaning is the one that corresponds to acquisition of new cognitive capacities and intelligence expansion. And this generalizes the concept of cognitive development beyond the conventional psychological context because we apply it to systems in general and already.
What I'm missing there
Yes.
is the sense. I see the distinction making, but distinctions should be meaningful distinctions. It should make sense, not any distinction makes sense.
That's a subtle point because I would say that if we think in terms of individuation or emergence, whenever a distinction emerges or is established, it already carries an intrinsic sense in it, because it's an event of symmetry breaking. You see, if I take a kind of neutral observer that see everything and is indifferent to anything that he sees, and suddenly some aspect of the universe become distinct in the sense that it is not anymore the same like everything else. And by creating this distinction, by creating a boundary, a formation of a certain kind of a boundary formation already involves an intrinsic meaning. Of course, when we speak about it in terms which are more complex,
I don't agree. Because you can make distinction in an infinite number of ways, and most of those are completely meaningless. Give me a set of 1,000 items, and I can subdivide it in 2 to the 1,000 different ways. And most of those distinctions are completely
just as an exercise which is already within your capabilities. Of course, you can do it, but this does not it does not counter-argue the point, because if you think about the emergence of order out of disorder, the distinction starts from something which is contingent, but once certain individuals are being consolidated within the process of individuation, the distinctions that make them what they are have an intrinsic meaning. So I don't think that what you said just contradicts.
How do they make distinctions? They make distinctions because these distinctions somehow make sense for them. That's something that I don't see in your.
I'm going to speak about it in a few moments. I'm relating to this point in just a few slides. So the actual sense making is a continuous process of integration and disintegration. It's not only integration of creating relation, but also it may disintegrate and destroy individuals that are already there. And it happens within, it is taking place within the distributed fluid network of agents. And there is no a priori subject agent to make sense. This is also a critical point, because both subject and object, agents, environments, all of them co-emerge in the course of sense making. Sense making is something that I understand, like open-ended intelligence, something that precedes the distinctions that make individuals. It is a necessary process for the emergence of individuals, but it is primary to them. And this is actually the essence of open-ended intelligence. And just to make some kind of a visual, I made a small drawing of everything that I was speaking about, just to make it in front of your eyes. So let us. So yes, I'm writing in sense, I'm using the term sense making, but this does not imply that there is somebody who makes the sense. Yes, it's So the main terms that I was using are just organized in the same manner. I'm speaking about the metaphysics of self-organization, of resolution, where resolution here is, I want to remind you, I'm using it as the emergence of organization or order out of no order. And these three concepts are facilitating evolution. So it's sense-making, open-ended intelligence, and individuation. This is the more philosophical, metaphysical aspect. This is the more systemic perspective, because sense-making, when I apply sense-making in the broader sense, it's about systems, it's cognitive systems, and using cognition is something which is really a very broad concept. And when we think about the concept of intelligence, it's the process that brings forth intelligent agents, goal-oriented intelligent behaviors.
Fatal attraction is cognitive.
Sorry?
Fatal attraction is something you do there, that's not cognitive.
Not exactly. It is cognitive, but maybe it's not wise,
Carnal is
or
cognitive.
maybe it is. Maybe it is. You cannot know. But this fatal attraction seems I wrote a certain scene like from a movie, and I called it fatal attraction because it is threatening to destroy something. But maybe something else will grow which is much, much, much more. And we don't know it. But we tend to relate negatively to anything that tries to destroy or threatens to destroy or disintegrate individuals that are already there. Yes.
I think the way I relate to this is that we all well, I mean, I guess that we think of it in a dualistic way, but I think order needs disorder, creation needs destruction, life needs death. These are not separate things. These are, in some sense, they're together. What does it even mean, one without the other?
Yes, but what I want you to see here is that there is, like, in the center we have this Heraclitan process of change, which is facilitated by concepts like this in an inner circle, while the outer circle, which speaks about more or less stable entities, like individuals or goal-oriented intelligent agents or cognitive systems that have established capacities, and therefore they have environments and they have actions that they can perform and perceptions that they can even learn. Yes, but this is how I would like to present it. And then now I'm getting back, Francis, to the point that you asked about just before. I will speak shortly about the phases of individuation, and basically I divided it into three phases. Pre-individual boundary formation. In the middle there is fluid individuals, and the final is fully formed individuals or identities. And these are three phases in a process of individuation. And when I say a process of individuation, it can go both ways. Yes, from the pre-individuals through fluid individual into fully formed individuals, and also backwards from fully formed individual into fluid individuals and into pre-individuals, and just disintegrating. And very shortly, in the pre-individual boundary formation, boundaries arise due to non-uniformity of effective interactions within a population. It means that there are certain contingent effects within groups of agents that are just within a certain environment, and simply put, agents that have more somehow contingently have more interactions between them tend to clump together and form certain boundary that distinguish them from the rest of the population. So this is something very primitive. And here, you cannot really say that there is already sense in the sense of sense making. And this is something that it's like this pre-individual boundary formation is something that facilitates in the very primitive level the arisal of some order from noise, and it is always some kind of symmetry breaking. It does not have a reason, it does not have a purpose, it just happens. So,
But why agents are already there if it's it's like from another layer or something?
it's another layer, and if you look into the paper, you will see how.
These are individuals that like.
Yes, it's
before.
again like here we have kind of stuff which is made of small primitive agents that clump together, create some relation. And you see that the last slide.
It was most interesting in mutual paper.
So you are right to, this is something that I just took it out from the presentation because it will become too long to show how, but you have
These
to
are
think about the
individuals
population of some kind of base material, and where this population of agents interact, they create individuals. And on the other side of the spectrum, we speak about fully formed individuals, and the creation of fully formed individuals requires interdependence between agents and regularity in their interactions. So here, when we see individuals, we actually see systems, and an identity is generated when a network of interdependent agents become operationally closed, and this reminds of the idea of organizations in chemical organization. So they form certain set of interactions where the continuation of existence of each component depends on the interactions with other components. So this is what it means to be operationally closed. And of course, this must be regular. So if it exists only for a very short period of time, compared to what we examine, the fact that there is interdependence is not enough. We need a certain kind of regularity in order to get stable, or at least marginally stable individuals or identities. And of course, this is according to scales. But stable identities that arise from strict operational closures are idealizations that are always temporary. And I repeat it maybe the third or fourth time in the presentation. And the fact is that we tend to see the world in terms of stable identities as merely a habit. And it is a consequence of our own individuation as observers. And therefore, I get to this idea of fluid individuals. Since the phases of sense-making, yes, the consolidation of entities, of individuals, is actually a continuum of change, which is spanning from ultimate disparity or disorder to highly organized cognitive agents or systems. While the pre-individual phase is what is characterized by a majority of contingent interactions, operational closures that form stable identities are characterized by a majority of coordinated, regular interactions. And what I call fluid individuals form a thick borderline between these two extremes. And fluid individuals are entities whose defining characteristics change across time, but they do not lose their overall distinctiveness. Fluid individuals may lose or gain components or properties, etc., but still they keep on a continuum of distinctiveness in relation to their milieu, in the relations to the environment. And what I would like to say is that fluid individuals are the place where new sense objects arise out of no sense, and it is where intelligence expands, and I want to add something to this diagram. Think about this as a kind of three-dimensional diagram that you look from above. Now I will make the same thing as you may look at it from the side. And here there is disparity, disorder, it should have been like, I'm not a big painter. And here we have this outer rim of organized systems. And if you look at it from the side, so here is the place of the prey individual that I'm speaking about. These are the individual identities. And here these are the fluid individual I am speaking about. So they populate a kind of very thick borderline between pro-individual entities and individual definite identities. And actually what we see around us all the time is mostly different degrees of fluid identities. And this is why intelligence can expand. So if you look at this from above, you will see this. Yes, the largest circle is systems that are consolidated individuals and oriented intelligence, and the inner circles are as well sense-making, open-ended intelligence, and individuation is taking place within this realm of fluid individuals.
Where do you position a biological organism? In fluid or in
Everywhere. Everywhere, because if you look at the evolutionary time scale, if you look about an individual, you can see the growth from being a baby to an adult. So you can apply the same. I wouldn't like to apply or project something. Where do I locate life? Life is located also in pro-individual because there are certain very primitive materials like viruses or pieces of RNA that already still today are contributing to evolution, and most of the organisms are in some kind of a process of individuation.
Okay, but where do you, I was, autopoiesis, where would you place autopoiesis? Like, would autopoietic system be the system fully individuated?
Autopoiesis is just below this, more here.
So if biological systems, like organisms, are all organisms, or all
Biological systems, yes.
Yeah,
Biological systems are very, very close.
okay, I mean like one organism.
Yes. Yes, one organism manifesting goal-oriented intelligence is a sense-making system, but in the first meaning, not in the second meaning. And of course, it is individual, but nevertheless, it is capable of learning, etc. So it's not strictly the outer. There are processes of individuation ongoing all the time. And what is the time now? I'm still at 5 minutes.
You are talking for 1 hour 46 minutes, so you cannot have some.
Only 1 hour.
So, in view of this, just to get a little bit more into the mechanism of how this process of open-ended intelligence is taking place, so we are speaking about the resolution of incompatibility, and again I mentioned the collection of disparate incompatible agents does not constitute an individuated system as yet, and when this whatever interactions are happening in such a collection, no correlated or coordinated exchange of signals takes place, and therefore agents, to a very large extent, relate to each other as sources of noise. And an individuated system arises from a disparate collection of agents only when its members become compatible. Well, sorry, the concept of compatibility is just a concept that distinguishes between organized and disorganized relations, both factual and dynamic. And of course, again, I'm just repeating the use of the terminology, is that higher degrees of compatibility are associated with the resolution of problematic situations. And here we reach actually the final idea that I'm exploring here, is that compatibility, achieving compatibility is a consequence of coordination. Coordinated agents affect each other in a non-random manner, but still maintain a relevant degree of distinctiveness. And therefore, open-ended intelligence is associated with coordination that is achieved by initially disparate groups of agents in the course of their interactions. Now, there is a more elaborated model that shows how it happens across strata, but basically, coordination is what brings us from disorder into organized universe. It's all about coordination, and coordination is multi-scale. It happens at all scales, from the minutest scale to the largest scale, and in parallel. So mechanisms of coordinations are, of course, foundational to open-ended intelligence, to the idea, to the concept. And I define here coordination as the reciprocal regulation of behavior given in terms of exchanging matter, energy, or information among interacting agents. The idea is that agents within population overcome initial incompatibility and becoming coordinated just by constraining their behaviors or constraining behaviors of other agents. And of course, this involves also connectivity. So coordination can also be achieved by connecting to certain agents and disconnecting from other agents. So most generally, coordination is achieved by reciprocally determination or selection of mutual behaviors. And this, of course, requires a level of feedback between the interacting agents. Therefore, the underlying processes that progressively achieve coordinations are basically cybernetic processes, which again argues why cybernetic is so important. And the way I see it is that there are the processes that bring forth coordination in a spontaneous manner are happening in distributed population, and there is a kind of a spontaneous exploration and discovery of coordinated interactions. And what I call a new sense consolidates only when such discovered coordinated interactions become also recurrent. And then suddenly we see a boundary which is persistent across time. And if we have a boundary, there are actions, perceptions that can happen across the boundary. So habit forming is an inherent part of coordination. But the tendency towards formation of recurrent patterns of interactions, again, it's not given a priori, and it is itself an outcome of individuation. So within this framework, at no point we go back into a kind of an idea or a conceptual system which is based on a priori given individuals. It's processed all the way down. And also it's important to know that regulation of interactions between agents is considered a meta capacity, because not only agents now have they affect and being affected by each other, but they also regulate the way that they are affected and being affected by each other. And this kind of meta capacity of regulation of interactions is considered, at least in some views of cognition, the enactive cognition, it is considered as a definitional property of a cognitive system. And this is why this supports the notion of using cognition in a very broad sense. And again, the regulation is not designed and not globally driven. It is gradually emerging in the course of interactions, and this is why in most of what we observe around us, we see a migration from simple systems to more complex systems, because coordination cannot be achieved. Coordination is a gradual process. It's not something that can be achieved at all scale and all levels in parallel. So I think that I have reached the point of beginning.
Ah.
And I don't know if this now makes more sense to you than it made before, maybe less. Not sure. I hope that something was gained by the 2 hours of speaking, because I ended with I started.
Well, I understood it from the beginning, so I'm not sure I needed all the intermediate steps.
Oh, yeah, sometimes it's nice to get into the details. And so this is basically what I wanted to say. And the artificial general intelligence train is arriving fast. You will never see it. And the paper that include this, that on which this presentation is based, was just recently published in Experimental and Theoretical Artificial Intelligence, Journal of, and you can read it online. It's a journal that the VUB is. Yeah, so it can be. But if you
Don't forget to put it somewhere in an archive. So.
Yes, it's in archive. It's in the GBI and.
Although Google Scholar should be able to find it. So.
Yes, it's published in quite a few places, and they are not very fascistic about it. They actually you can keep personal copies or even to send to your colleagues and things like this. It's already okay.
If the AGI train's arriving quickly,
I don't believe it's
no, I'm
maybe that
just
fast.
Yeah.
asking a question. If the AGI train is coming quickly and we'll never see it, where are they going? You know that I mean.
I have an answer.
I know, I'm interested.
From here to there.
Where's there?
Well,
I
let's hear.
think the whole philosophy of open intelligence is that intelligence is a much more complex, widespread, and in a sense slow process than the AGI people tend to think. That's why I don't believe that the AGI train will pass it fast.
If you put
It's
Weaver
much
into
more open-ended. It means that it encompasses many more agents and many more interactions than what they put in their computers. That's why it can't go as fast as that. I think everybody underestimates the complexity of the real world.
I agree to this last sentence, but to the first sentence, I must admit that I don't know. Sometimes I think that it wouldn't arrive so fast, and sometimes I think that it might well do.
I fail to see the connection between this vision of AGI, let's say the traditional goal-oriented artificial intelligence and the singularity, with what you just explained to us, which is a completely different picture. So why?
This is just a caricature that I like, so I put
Yeah,
it.
okay.
I don't think that it's
a nice cartoon, but
yeah, it's not in the spirit of the rest of the presentation. But actually,
no, but that's why I don't quite understand why you're not more skeptical about this picture.
This I can explain because I don't underestimate the disruptive power of the open-ended intelligence. And actually, if we think about it linearly, I completely agree. I don't think that the progression or the evolution of intelligence is happening in linear steps or in systematic steps. It's not like we have a system and we can improve the system and improve the system and improve the system. I don't think it will happen like this. I think that we can we can be surprised. Like, look, Francis, if you have looked at
Don't
life,
we will be surprised. I don't doubt that we will.
suppose we are aliens observing the idea about the aliens is debatable. But suppose we are aliens, a kind of philosophical aliens, seeing the Earth 4 billion years ago were just, it was the beginning of life. And why it's not aliens? Because aliens supposedly know something about life, so they will be able to make some inferences. But observing this soup of primordial life in a naive realist perspective, and thinking about human civilization as it is today, not brilliant, but we have it as it is. You need more than imagination to see how it goes from here to there. And therefore,
I mean, I don't doubt at all that there will be big revolutions and big surprises, but the ones of the singularity view are kind of too simple, too predictable,
the singularity view
not
is,
open-ended enough.
the singularity view is like it's a flame. It's like something that you go to a demonstration and you wave the flag.
The only thing I like about the singularity idea is that the singularity implies that there is a horizon behind which we cannot look, which change will be so drastic that everything will change. That I agree with. But the idea of the singularity as being the train of AGI that suddenly overtakes us and becomes much smarter than humans, but AGI is not open-ended. It's still in that box. It's still a number of programs. It still has a limited input and output. It's not the global brain. The global brain is open-ended. AGI isn't.
I think that this is the reason why Ben Gotzel wanted me to present this last year, and he wants me to present it again this year, because he thinks that the community of people that are interested in AGI
Should hear this story.
should
I
hear
agree.
this kind of ideas
I fully agree.
in order just to open different ways of thinking about it. And therefore, I'm not even, at a certain point, Victoria and me had a lot of discussions of maybe to try to build some model, an approximate model, in order to demonstrate something that can be done with it. And then eventually, it's not that I give it up, but I think it's more important to develop the concept or the philosophy behind it, because it really enriches a certain movement, which is important, because artificial intelligence is important, but it cannot be the sum total of a certain set of algorithms that know to even to drive cars or even to save people from terrible diseases, etc. It is more important than this. It goes much deeper than this.
But what I a little bit lacked in your presentation is a critique of the goal-oriented view of intelligence. What you describe here is something that's so wide that the notion of goal doesn't even appear. What is it specifically about the goal-oriented that is a problem? I see quite a lot of problems with it, but you didn't go into that.
Yes, but okay, there is a limitation of the presentation.
It wasn't easy.
What?
It wasn't his goal.
No, but because you start by contrasting open-ended intelligence with goal-oriented
Yes.
intelligence, which I think is a good way to say
Yes.
all the traditional views in AI are goal-oriented. So now I want to open up your mind to something else. But then you don't really say what is wrong with the goal-oriented paradigm. You just say, well, there is this much broader view which is still kind of vague.
Yeah,
And I would like you to think about it. But I think you can make a stronger critique of the goal-oriented intelligence.
yeah.
You mean the goal-oriented intelligence people should be deconstructed?
Yes.
Look,
if you want to say it like
Yeah,
that.
that's on board.
Let's deconstruct it.
This drawing,
But we agree about being deconstructed.
this
That's
drawing,
the problem, people don't.
What's the worst thing?
Look, nobody likes being deconstructed, and that's why deconstruction gets so much resistance in the scientific community. No scientist would like a bunch of guys coming along and telling them that you need to be totally deconstructed. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes that.
What's the worst thing you can do to somebody? Like with a car, you mainly shoot them a bullet in the bed of the deconstructor.
A scientist
Sounds
deconstructing them is a bullet to the brain.
No, it sounds worse. The bullet of the bed you don't feel it, it's just really that all.
It's worse.
It's a process of torture where you kind of pulling things apart one by one.
I went back to this slide because here it's a kind of a political slide considering the original audience. So the picture here shows goal-oriented intelligence and open-ended intelligence as a kind of counterparts that complement each other. But in fact, what is written here is something a little bit different. It's written that whereas goal-oriented intelligence is the well-defined tip of the intelligence iceberg, open-ended intelligence is the vast iceberg itself. So,
Yeah, well, a simpler way of putting this would be that goal-oriented intelligence is a subset of open-ended intelligence.
but it is diminishingly, how you say, it's indefinitely diminishing small compared to open-ended intelligence. It's really the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg.
Well, let's go for a drink and continue the discussion.
That model is
Thank you.
Very interesting.